Today on Context, we live in a complex world. Tragedy surrounds us, but there is always a light that guides us through the darkness. How do we know? Stick with us to find out. This season on Context, we went deep into the issues that affect us. Here are some of our highlights.
We understand there are questions and concerns about this.
No, are you still smoking pot? I mean,
no, I'm not actually. I had to stop.
Why?
I was addicted to it.
You stopped smoking weed?
I stopped smoking because, to sit here and to talk about what I'm doing, I want to be really clear.
I think some people have more tolerance, for smoking pot than others. And what about you?
I don't smoke.
Oh, okay.
I don't enjoy it. I don't understand. I don't know how people function on it.
We've come an awfully long way from days of prohibition. Now navigating new waters as Canada joins Uruguay as the second country in the world to legalize recreational marijuana. Of course, deep down, we all know what's not good for our bodies, and still our vices seem to control us. Today on Context, how are Canada's faith communities reacting to cannabis culture? How will we educate our youth to deal with another mind-altering substance? Let's start with each of our faith traditions. Dr. McQueen, let's start with you. What does the Catholic faith advise about marijuana consumption?
Well, it's very interesting. There's not an official position on this because it's so new and because everything has been illegal. But the Canadian bishops are really taking it very seriously, and they've already sent out a generic letter talking about the risks. And I think, as with most of us in the Catholic community, we're really more concerned about children than anything else, and the sheer availability of marijuana. And as well as availability, I think the idea that something is legalized has always meant in some communities that if it's legal, it's morally acceptable, and we don't really believe that.
Rabbi Wise.
Well, we have 2 points of view. The first is a concept called dina machuta dina, which means that the law of the land is the law for our community. So now that it's legal, as of today, it's legal within the Jewish community. We also have a concept that's called l'chaim. You might have heard that phrase when people take a glass, drink l'chaim to life.
To life.
So, we have alcohol, we have other of those kinds of things where we celebrate life, right? So it's l'chaim, to life. But we don't want to use something to get away from life. That would be mechaim, from life. So if you're doing it responsibly and you're doing it in the to life, to celebration, then there are opportunities to participate in using marijuana to life, l'chaim.
Handy, the Hindu community, what would their view be on consumption of marijuana?
Anything that intoxicates the mind and takes it away from its pure state is not advisable. Society, across the board, Hinduism is very particular that we relate to nature and we must harmonize with nature. Nature is here to serve us, not to make us lesser than we are.
The Muslim view on consumption of cannabis.
The Muslim view is actually probably known. As you know, alcohol, wine is not allowed to consume in Islam. This has been since 1400 years ago. So it's very clear what we're supposed to drink and eat. It's halal, would be the equivalent, not exactly the same, but equivalent of kosher. And it's very clear the injunction is any intoxicant is not allowed.
I would like to see the big cannabis companies or just the government try to address the small business aspect to it and try not to leave them out as they're the ones who fought for the culture and create the community in which everybody's now cashing in on.
Not every Christian is on the same page when it comes to recreational marijuana. Jeff Lacine smoked pot as a teenager and now is a pastor at Selwoods Baptist Church in Portland, Oregon, where recreational marijuana has been legal since 2015. Nice to see you, Jeff.
It's good to be with you.
Okay, Jeff, talk to me about why you decided to stop smoking pot.
The short answer is that Jesus took hold of my life and he gave me different priorities. So now my priorities are to experience the goodness and glory of God, the reality of God as he intended me to. So the end game for me as a Christian is to be resurrected in a new body and to experience the reality of God, not a distorted reality.
So Jeff, a lot of Christians will listen to that and say, hey, I don't see smoking pot any different than having a glass of wine at the end of my day. What would you say to those people out there?
Yeah, so there clearly is a permissible God-glorifying use of wine, according to Scripture. The Bible goes out of its way to actually point out the place of wine that can be permissible and good, but it can also be bad. So, there's warnings about wine and being drunk with wine and having our reality so distorted that wine doesn't serve us in our lives, but it actually works against us in experiencing reality. And the question that I would pose to those who are wanting to use marijuana recreationally, so not under the supervision of a doctor, but are using it to have fun or to escape in some way, is this enhancing reality and getting you closer, especially to Christians, to experiencing the reality of God as you are intended to.
And he held me for a long time, and he said, tell them we're human.
They are not people from our country. They are migrants.
They are people without a country. Their misfortune, being born in the wrong place at the wrong time into the wrong religion. Men, women, children running for their lives. Entire villages burned, hundreds of thousands driven from their homes, almost 1 million Rohingya Muslims and Christians living in tents. This is Cox's Bazar, the largest refugee camp in the world. Last time we spoke, sir, you challenged us with the 3 Ps, perseverance, patience, and presence. Is it happening from Canada's side?
Well, I think it is. I mean, I think first of all, we're very much present. I mean, the fact is that we are a major donor in the camps. We are a major presence and an interlocutor with Bangladesh. We are continuing to engage with Myanmar, although I have to confess that is a difficult process because of the challenge of getting Myanmar to appreciate the extent to which there has to be accountability for what has clearly gone wrong.
Practically, I think we've learned here about geopolitics that when we put tax dollars into a crisis like Cox's Bazar, we actually get a voice back, right? And
yeah.
that's what you're saying is Canada, keep on the front line. We're actually shaping what could happen to these most unfortunate people.
It's a reality that, and this is true in Cox's Bazar, is also true in terms of our relationship with the UNHCR, that if we are prepared to be a more substantial partner, we're much more likely to have a voice at the table that deals with Bangladesh, at the table that deals with Myanmar. And I think in New York and in Geneva, the 2 main UN headquarters, which I have been visiting on a regular basis, our views are treated with more respect.
Just to give you an idea how serious the Bangladeshi government is about getting the Rohingya people home, they're literally building a road. It's called the Friendship Highway, and it's going to connect Bangladesh all the way to Myanmar. You'll remember when the Rohingya people came over in that influx, you saw many people coming and falling off boats. That's because they walked for days and then had to take boats across that river. Of course, this road will change all of that. Amina Khatun will not go. She is exhausted by any idea of movement. She tells me how religious leaders and educated members of her society had a target on their back. Her own daughter slain for being Rohingya.
One of our daughter, she was tortured a lot.
What do you want Canadians back home to know about the Rohingya people?
If you want to send us to Myanmar, we don't want to go. I never want to go back in my country, in Myanmar, because what I experienced there, I never can forget these things. If you want to send us forcefully, you just kill us here.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, Molly, a Christian hugging a Muslim, that's exactly what needs to happen. All of us as religious friends need to say this cannot go on. We cannot have such ethnic and religious-based hatred.
You're a nation of peace. We like peace. But they didn't like us.
We know that we as a society are better than this. We know that hatred will never win out.
Here in Pittsburgh, hate will not triumph. Love will win out today.
All of us have to take steps to counter hate with love, to counter darkness with our light.
Here we stand again. A mass shooting in America. Evil enters a place of worship. Sabbath will never be the same at the Tree of Life Synagogue in a quiet Pittsburgh neighborhood. 11 innocent people gunned down at a baby naming ceremony.
Firstly, our community is devastated by the attack in Pittsburgh, and we mourn the loss of the 11 souls that were tragically murdered. We're concerned about the rising tide of anti-Semitism, both here at home, across the United States, and in Europe as well, where we've seen a rising tide of nationalist groups, white supremacist groups, Islamist groups, who are all propagating anti-Semitism, both online, in the media, and at rallies. And all of this put together, I believe, is what's causing the rising tide of anti-Semitism, which can and does, and as we saw in Pittsburgh, lead to violence.
The fact that this attack took place during a worship service makes it even more heinous. A place of worship is a sacred place. It's a place of peace and a place of grace. It's a place where a community comes together to celebrate that they hold most dear and most sacred.
Israel has come together to mourn the loss of their Jewish friends in the United States. Joining me now to discuss how the country is responding to the attack is our correspondent, Marnie Blum. She joins me now from Jerusalem. Marnie, can you give us a sense of the atmosphere in Israel after the tragic anti-Semitic synagogue killings in Pittsburgh?
Well, directly following the attack, the sense here was shock, sadness, despair, and anxiety. As you probably know, many Israelis have family and friends living in the United States, and there was a sense of, is somebody that I know a victim or has become a victim? As we know, the names were not immediately released. And so, yeah, there was a great sense of sadness here and also a frustration because yet again, there's another anti-Semitic attack. And we just wonder, the people wonder here, if these types of attacks will ever come to an end or there'll be solution found.
Merle, let's start with you. I know your organization really targets university students through education. Do you find anti-Semitism is alive and well with that younger generation?
Yes, unfortunately, we do. We find it on campuses. We find it in high schools. It's not that it's pervasive. We're fortunate in Canada. But there is an impression that Israel is being misrepresented in a way that the Jews are being targeted in what we're calling a new anti-Semitism.
Give us an idea of how bad it is out there.
It hasn't been great as of late. Our organization puts out an annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents. It is the authoritative document on anti-Semitism in Canada, used by police services, government bodies, NGOs across the country. We've noted a 5-year uptick in anti-Semitic incidents over the past 5 years. And for the last 2 years, we've recorded the worst record of anti-Semitic incidents for the years 2016 and then for the year 2017 since we've started compiling this audit in 1982. Most problematic would say for the year 2017, there was a 107% increase in terms of anti-Semitic vandalism. And the types of things we've seen, scare the members of our Jewish community to the core. Things like Jewry must perish and Heil Hitler and Jews did 9/11, swastikas galore. These are the types of things we're seeing, as Marilyn mentioned too, at high schools, at elementary schools, on university campuses, and across the country.
Castle is the first video streaming service that's been created to serve you, with high-quality, faith-based media for all ages, and a live 24/7 prayer chat. Castle features Christian TV shows, documentaries, teaching series, and kids content. Start your free 30-day trial of Castle and discover this quality Christian resource made for your entertainment and your spiritual growth. Sign up now at intothecastle.com.
Our Season 8 review continues. Now, a topic that had the most amount of feedback online when the United Church of Canada settled a lawsuit with an atheist pastor, allowing Greta Vosper to keep her congregation despite not believing in God. So we asked, is Canadian Christianity under construction? Take a look at our interviews.
I don't believe that Jesus was the only Son of God. I don't believe that he died for our sins. This I have to leave behind.
If there's no God, so if there's no higher value, let's say, if there's no transcendent value, then you can do whatever you want.
If your mountain guide is paid fundamentally to do one thing, which is to lead you on the path of safety, and he instead leads you into a path of danger and death, then all that charm becomes grotesque.
Crossless Christianity. What happens to us when we lose our focus?
One of the things that's really important for us to recognize is that we are uplifted by God's love.
Christendom has had its fair share of critics and scandals over its 2,000-year history, but rocking the Canadian church lately is a failed heresy trial. A confessed atheist minister will be allowed to keep her job as a pastor of a Christian church. Well, joining us now is the moderator of the United Church of Canada, Reverend Richard Bott. Thank you for joining us there from Vancouver. All right, a church under construction. You've had an amazingly challenging situation in an atheist minister. Why was it important for this trial, as it was called, not to go ahead, and for Greta Vosper to stay a United Church minister, even though she doesn't believe in God?
Well, Lorna, I think it's important to understand that this was a settlement that was made between the regional body, Toronto Conference, the Reverend Greta Vosper, and the congregation West Hill United Church. And so this was a local decision to settle this process and continue on in ministry. This really doesn't affect the doctrine of the United Church. It doesn't affect the processes that we have used and continue to use in celebrating who we are as God's people and as disciples of Jesus Christ.
Okay, the press statement where the church body as a whole, where you stated we value diversity and belief in God. One thing we do know about the United Church is if, let's say, for example, someone in the United Church came out supporting the Ku Klux Klan, there would be an outcry over it, wouldn't there?
I believe there would.
So there are absolutes in the United Church. Why aren't there absolutes on belief in God must be part of our ministerial service?
Well, I think those are conversations that we've been having for the last 93 years, and even before church union happened in the United Church of Canada. We have a very, very wide and diverse theology in the United Church. Now, to be fair, that wide and diverse theology is based on our relationship with God, our relationship with Jesus Christ. And in fact, all of our doctrinal statements say quite clearly that God is central to who we are. And when I think about what seems to be a sort of a versus, a dance between two different core values, they actually aren't different core values, because our understanding of our inclusiveness is all based on that relationship with God, on that relationship with Christ.
Reverend Dr. Connie Den Bonk is no stranger to the United Church. She leads Alderwood United Church as its pastor. Connie, you also work on the committee backroom scene as well. Why did the heresy trial in the United Church not go ahead?
Well, oddly enough, the term heresy trial has not been used by anybody but Greta Vosper. So neither has the term witch hunt. But Greta was called to question on whether she could honestly answer the questions that she'd been asked at ordination. That is she in essential agreement with the doctrine of the United Church of Canada, which is the same as almost any other church's basic doctrine, the Trinity, Jesus Christ is Lord, authority of Scripture. When she was called to question, there was a tribunal which agreed that she was not in accordance with the basis of union. She appealed, and then the group which was to decide on how that would be dealt with, suddenly came out and said that this would not go any further. There had been some kind of out-of-court settlement reached. And beyond that, we in the United Church know nothing except that it was essentially thrown out of court on some legality.
There's a whole lot else going on in this United Church that you belong to that is under construction. Tell us what the God survey of you as clergy in the United Church of Canada seems to indicate.
Well, the God survey seems to indicate that the majority of United Church ministers do believe in God and do believe in a supernatural God who hears prayer. And we know that on a congregational level, that even more lay people have a faith in God that they're seeking. We have to understand that the United Church is not a unified denomination, whatever our name might appear to say, but that we are an extremely fragmented denomination. So that we might have a Greta over here, but she certainly does not set the agenda for the rest of the denomination. And we have really wonderful things going on in many pockets of the church where there is renewal happening.
The issue of transparency is what has a lot of people in Canada very upset here.
Yeah.
How does the largest institution on the planet do better at this?
This is a huge challenge, as we all know, for them, and I don't think people really realised for a long time how big a challenge it was. And it really has only been in the past few years when more and more countries have been coming forward with accusations, allegations, etc., that the Catholic Church itself has really had to get down to brass tacks and deal with it in a much more serious manner than I think it had done before. I think before, and even still today, to a large extent, bishops are responsible in their own dioceses for dealing with these matters. And now it's coming out more and more that although people have been dealt with, there was that whole question again of, if you like, avoiding telling anybody where people were going. So a real lack of transparency. So of course, from Pope Francis's point of view, the Roman Curia, the whole administration, I think it is true. I mean, having read most of the documents that have come out about these particular issues, they're very, very serious about changing this. I mean, many bishops have had to resign, you know, from the point of view of the Vatican, because of how they have handled things. They just have not lived up to, if you like, normal standards of how you deal with sex offenders on the one hand, and the care of victims on the other. And so, and it's good to see that, I think it's good to see that so many changes are being thought about and being made, but I don't think we're there yet. I think this whole culture, perhaps, is something that will unfortunately take some time, you know, to change, to turn around, to have everybody really see it for some of these really serious offences. Frankly, I don't know if it was just in the Catholic Church that people didn't understand the whole question of recidivism, you know, the repeat performances. But that's no excuse. The fact that other people do things is never an excuse. But I think the Catholic Church really has to take severe steps to remedy this.
Castle is the first video streaming service that's been created to serve you, with high-quality, faith-based media for all ages and a live 24/7 prayer chat. Castle features Christian TV shows, documentaries, teaching series, and kids content. Start your free 30-day trial of Castle and discover this quality Christian resource made for your entertainment and your spiritual growth. Sign up now at intothecastle.com.
Looking back at our season so far and what is happening with Canada's opioid epidemic. Parents spoke out against our country's current drug problem and are calling for better laws to deal with this crisis. Take a look.
This time tomorrow, you are back in sober living.
Yeah, okay.
You do not leave my sight ever, because for the next 24 hours, you are mine, all mine.
You're not supposed to do CPR on your own kid. Not just once, but 6 times.
And because of the cheapness and availability of this killing drug, this murderous drug, a lot of people are dying.
Parents are telling their stories of opioid tragedy. Children dying in an escalating battle over illicit drug use. 90% of all addictions start before the age of 21. Today on Context, a support group of over 700 Canadian mothers with one tragic common denominator. They have lost a child to opioid overdose. A father is with me here in studio to talk about losing his son, Desi, whose 23rd birthday would have been today. John, it is not the birthday you ever wanted for Desi. Tell us about the medicine cabinet, where this begins.
He shared with us and how it all started. Percocets was the rage. He heard about it. He was a curious guy. He wanted to figure what's all the fuss was, and thought, I'll try it. And so a friend said, hey, my dad has some Percocets in the medicine cabinet, and I don't know what he was recovering from, and so they tried it, and that was it. He was hooked.
As you hear this story, as you have been down this road of advocacy for a while, you have believed that your Christian faith needed to be part of your journey. What difference has it made?
It has helped me. This has become my calling, really. I lost my son. I can't change this, but I don't want this loss to be without a lesson for me and a lesson for others. And it was actually in church that I connected with the right people that sent me on the path of advocacy. So for me, it's been like a ministry, an outreach ministry to the greater community. And my faith community in my church helps me stay strong and gives me the support I need. They help me share my message.
This is a huge problem we have in Canada right now. I mean, it is estimated that between 700,000 and 1 million Canadians are now addicted to opioids. How we got here? Well, it's a multifactorial problem. One of the biggest contributing factors to this was prescription opioids that were given to people by their doctors. Back in the early 2000s, we had the pharmaceutical companies more or less rewrote textbooks to create something called the fifth vital sign, which was pain. So suddenly we had physicians all across Canada, in the US, prescribing things like Percocet or Oxycontin, and some statistics show that 1 in 5 people will become dependent on an opioid after a 7 to 10 day course.
So how can it be averted? Like I think about, the letters we've had saying, I need this painkiller, I need this opioid to live a functional life. Don't stigmatize or criminalize my need for pain management.
Right.
What's the answer there?
Well, I mean, the problem is this. When people are addicted to opioids, I mean, coming off them is incredibly challenging. There's a number of ways. There's pharmacological approaches to take them off. There's also things that we need to start doing in the community to help people who are addicted to these things and to alleviate that pain. And that is, likely spiritual answers to this. That's more connection. It's showing compassion to people around us, for the user and for the community that surrounds that poor person.
Matt, what touched me most about your documentary was how incredibly ordinary the Canadian families were in there. We recognize them all. I think we can all think of somebody who's had, in our own circles, who's had opioid addictions. Tell us how this is, how widespread the need is.
I mean, this opioid crisis is huge. Like I mentioned before, between 700,000 and 1 million Canadians are currently addicted. This is not just the people you see on the streets or some of the images we see in the media where you just see a needle and you see someone who's passed away on the streets. This is in the suburbs. This is affecting every community of every race, every demographic, gender. I mean, it is a problem that's an age. It's in all of our backyards and something that we need to wake up to.
As we close out 2018, we want to thank all our viewers for joining us.
Yes, and if you want to see more of any interview or topic on our show, you can find all of our episodes online, contextwithlornadewitt.com.
Okay, so be part of the conversation. Thank you for donating to this work. We appreciate that so much. You can learn more about everything we're working on through our Facebook and Twitter as well. Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2019.